Good afternoon. Again, it's challenging always to talk after lunch, but we'll try to keep it interesting enough. So I want to use the next 20 minutes for my talk to tell you the story of Sheba Medical Center and what we've been doing in the past 2.5 years. As I've said this morning, I have two hats at Sheba, which is Chief Medical Officer and Chief Innovation Officer. Not a very common combination. You don't see that too often, but the big advantage of holding both roles is you have one leg deep in the ground, or even more than ground, of what we do every day in healthcare. And I think most of you know exactly what I mean in terms of the intensity, in terms of the challenges, especially in Israel and in healthcare in Israel and hospitals in Israel. And the other leg where we want to be 20, 30, maybe even more years from now. And trying to link them together is obviously the challenge, and trying to make sure that what we invent actually answers the needs that we have currently. So so with that, I'll start. And talking about Sheba Medical Center is, I don't know why that happened. Talking about Sheba Medical Center, of course, it was mentioned this morning that we just won the top 10 hospitals in the world, and many people think, why, how come a hospital in Israel is on the top 10? And it sounds like, how much did you pay? And who did you pay to get there? So we obviously didn't pay, but I want to share with you a bit with, some of the facts of why we think we're so high on this list. First of all, Sheba is a very large hospital in terms of the, and this is of course the publication and the top 10 hospitals. Sheba is a large hospital. For those of you who are not familiar with Sheba, and I think everybody in Israel is, Sheba is a large hospital. It's one campus, which is uncommon in hospitals around the world. It's one campus, 200-acre, 22,000 cars coming in every day, 4 hotels, 2 shopping malls, a lake, a gas station. Not the typical hospital you would find. Almost 2,000 beds, all in all, on that one campus, really looking at the continuum of care from acute care to rehabilitation, children's, women's hospital, cancer center, post-acute care, all on one campus. And you see some of the numbers. I think one of the most interesting ones is the fact that we see about 1.6 million patients a year. Think about the population of Israel being 8.5. That's a big part of the population, and we're just one hospital. If you take into account the families of these patients, we're practically touching every family in the country, and that's a pretty large footprint by any account. You could see other numbers here, but I won't go through that. And the other thing in terms of not only the size and capacity, but it's also in terms of research. What we see in the top 10 hospitals, by the way, they're all big research facilities. And Newsweek has mentioned that research and innovation was one of their criteria to select the top hospitals. Yeah, nobody likes that to happen to him. So in terms of research, we do about a quarter to a third of all clinical trials in the country, which of course is a huge amount for just one hospital. We have the largest research laboratory space in the country. We have more research laboratory space than, for example, Weizmann Institute, which is only a research facility. Largest GMP laboratory space in the country, pretty much by far. So we do development of molecules and drugs. Medical education and medical simulation, we're a hub for that as well. Medical simulation practically started at Sheba worldwide in the year 2000 when we built the first simulation center in the world. So much of that actually started at Sheba. And of course, telehealth and digital health and big data are some of the things we'll be talking about. The other thing to note is, and it was mentioned I think this morning on one of the panels by Natalie Bloch, is the IT infrastructure at Sheba. I can't take credit for that. I think Professor Kreis can't take credit for that. It's the previous generation at Sheba that saw the vision back in the 90s, was probably one of the first hospitals in the world to go electronic. And in 2004, our last system transitioned from paper to electronic. So we basically have no paper in the hospital today. It doesn't only mean that we're advanced from a digital perspective, but also that the staff is very much used to working digitally. We almost don't look today at ECG printed on paper. Think about it. You remember a time when we used to hold up the chest X-rays Nobody, of course, does that today. We still look at ECGs printed most of the time, where we are now looking at ECGs on screens. I think that will go away as well. And when you see a doctor looking at a printed ECG, it'll be like pulling up their X-ray to the light. So in that case, we're a very digital hospital, and I think the staff is very much used to working digitally. Also, in terms of healthcare analytics, I won't go through of course, the list here, but there's a model by Health Catalyst which rates 8 levels. We go through all the way up to level 8, which is genomic, but not only genomic, linking genomics to other omics, including microbiomics, and to clinical data, including patient-reported outcomes, longitudinal data, and linking that to genomics using AI. So that's that in terms of the analytic platform. And interestingly enough, and very unique in the world, a very, very strong commercialization backbone. So we've been very active in innovation, research and innovation, but the innovation is very much applied, and the research is very much applied, so that once we have an IP, we take it to the market in many ways. And these are companies that span out of Sheba in the last 15 to 20 years. The first one was I think, I can't remember which was the first, but Medtronic that bought Ventor in 2009 was probably the biggest deal that we had at the time, $325 million, and then molecules that we sold to some of the big pharma. And much of that money, when we talk about hundreds of millions of dollars, much of that money goes back to the government, goes back to Sheba, and we use that money to accelerate innovation further. And that is, I call it keeping the wheel turning, because if you want to run on a wheel and the wheel is turning, it's much easier for you to run. And I was lucky enough to step into my chief innovation hat 2.5 years ago when the wheel was already spinning. Obviously, a much easier position to start. So why do we innovate? The first question I asked when I came into this role is, why do we innovate? We're so much commercially oriented that sometimes we forget that we're actually not innovating to make money. It's very, in Israel, I think we get confused sometimes. We put the money up front. And at Sheba, we needed to sit down and think about it and make a decision. Why are we innovating? What's the number one priority that makes us innovate? And we came after this very long strategic discussion to the fact and understanding and agreement that the number one reason is to improve care to our patients. We're a hospital, we treat patients, you've seen quite a lot of them. We want to improve care provided to our patients, number one. And so we will not innovate for something that does not improve care to our patients. Sometimes I get presented with an amazing billing system that can sell like hot potatoes in the American market. We're not interested. Doesn't provide value to our patients. We're only focusing on what provides value to our patients, and a big part of what we do, and you'll see this later, is about showing the proof of concept and then rolling this out very quickly so that all of our patients at Sheba could enjoy. And so if you come to Sheba, you will see multiple AI applications. Gidi has one. Multiple AI applications that are running at Sheba across the campus. And once we have a proof of concept, we roll it out very quickly, and I'll show you that. Again, to improve care to our patients. Number two, transform healthcare on a global scale, because we opened this morning with a lot of transformation and redesigning. We need to redesign healthcare. We all agree on that. We want to serve as a major player globally in redesigning healthcare. So not only improve care to our patients, but we see our global role as well in redesigning healthcare. And number three is a steady revenue stream. Why do we need the revenue stream? We need the revenue stream, number one, because innovation costs money, as you know, and we want to create more innovation. So successful innovation, commercialization begets more innovation. Again, keeping the wheel spinning, number one. And number two, the revenues many times go to improve care to our patients. Again, add more services, buy more technologies, improve care to our patients. So that money is critical in any healthcare organization. So that's the third priority, but it's definitely up there. So we needed to come up with a new strategy to accelerate innovation, because coming into this role, we wanted to do, first of all, much more than what we've done before. And we have done. You've seen some of the successes, really going very briefly through that. So much more. Much quicker, because pace is critical when you innovate. What's innovation today is not innovation tomorrow. And if you want to be on the cutting edge, and if you want to bring your ideas to fruition and so that they could have impact, you need to streamline processes. You need to work much quicker. The problem with academic medical centers and universities is we have a lot of bureaucracies, So number one thing, and I get asked that a lot, if you want to start an innovation program, what's the number one thing you need to do? Number one thing you need to do is set the infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, it's not about the space. It's first of all the contracts, the policies. How do I fast track innovation? I could tell you million stories on that. We don't have time, but this is critical to start an innovation program. We want our innovation to be game-changing. We're not looking for innovations that have very small increments of value. We want game-changing innovation, so we're not so much interested in a molecule that would become a drug that would extend life 3 months for terminal melanoma patients. That's short increments of value. If you're a melanoma patient, 3 months is a lot. But when you look about on the healthcare system and where we need the redesign, having a drug that costs $30,000 a month that extends life 3 months is not going to redesign healthcare. There's a need for that as well, but we're not focusing on those types of innovations because at the end of the day, we want to redesign healthcare. We've set that as our goal. And then this is how we came up with ARK. And ARK stands for Accelerate, Redesign, and Collaborate, accelerating innovation. I talked about the pace. To redesign healthcare by collaborating with partners. Collaboration in innovation is critical, and collaboration is a strategy. It's not a nice to have. It's a strategy. You need to put efforts into collaborations. And it's about creating an ecosystem that will change the future of medicine together. And you'll see by the end of my talk here that this is what we're actually aiming to build. It sits on top of four principles that really define ARK. The first principle is setting new priorities. So we've been very much focused on devices and pharma. Much of the successes, the exits we've done, the money that came in was because of pharma and devices. Again, we see digital health as the main transformation agent in the next 10 years. Digital health solutions will transform healthcare in the next 10 years. I'll just mention one thing that was again spoken this morning that we think very lightly about. Hospital at home. Hospital at home, mark my words, is going to be the one thing that has the most impact on healthcare in the next 10 years. And hospital at home sounds simple, right? Hospital at home. But hospital at home demands huge amount of innovation, technology, big data, new payment models to allow hospital at home to treat patients in a much better, much more efficient and effective way than we treat patients now in hospitals. This would demand a lot of innovation. So this is the one thing that, just as an example, when I say digital health, it's really the wide spectrum from personalized medicine. You'll hear Joel Dudley talk in the afternoon about personalized medicine and the work they're doing in Mount Sinai, really groundbreaking, to big data and AI, where this conference is focusing on, but also telemedicine. I mentioned hospital at home as one example, and virtual reality, augmented reality, and 3D printing. We call it virtualization of medicine. That's going to create another revolution as well. So the digital health in ARK is the full spectrum of digital health. The second principle of ARK is open innovation. We call ourselves now an open innovation campus. The idea with open innovation is that you open up your gates. We, unfortunately in Israel, hospitals have gates. Most places in the world, they don't have gates. We open up our gates and we let startups come in. Also patients come in. But we let startups come in. And we want those startups to come in and integrate and work with us. What a group you see here is a cybersecurity company that came into the ARK program. We give those startup companies, usually, I don't have my Sheba badge, Sheba badges, so they walk around the campus like part of the family. They get access to the space that they need to get access to. They get access to the staff cafeteria, for example, which sounds like a minor thing, right? Why should I go to the staff cafeteria? Well, everybody that works in a hospital knows that the staff cafeteria is where things happen, right? And so if you want to talk with a doctor and you're a startup company and your doctor has time only in 3 weeks from now on his calendar, he'll talk with you today in the cafeteria, if you can make it there. So getting a pass to the cafeteria is critical. So we turn them into part of the family, and if they need to, they go through orientation as well. You see these guys here, we actually taught them how to put on the scrubs and what needs to go on the leg and what needs to go on the head, because otherwise they get it confused. And when they walk into the OR with the leg cover on the head, they stick out miles away and everybody knows they're not in their natural environment. And so they treat them differently. And you know exactly what I mean. So this is critical in terms of getting them integrated and providing them with 360 degrees what they need, the access to the data, access to clinicians, access to patients through IRBs, of course, access to clinical sites. The third principle is international collaborations. I said collaboration is a strategy. To do international collaborations, what we found is if we go to the Stanfords of the world or the Mayo Clinics of the world and we say we want to collaborate with you around research, you know, they find a polite way to say get lost. Because our research budget, although it's the largest in Israel, is minor compared to Stanford, of course. But if we say we want to collaborate on innovation, then we get a very different response. Many times it's, where do we sign? And it's a very striking difference. Many of this is because of the startup nation mentality, and they hear that, you know, the largest healthcare medical center in Israel, and of course, and they know about Sheba, so they want to sign up for innovation. And we've done that in the past 2 years with 13 of the leading academic medical centers in North America, both the US and Canada. You see the names here. I won't repeat that, but basically we have two types of collaborations. One is co-innovation, where we have a team from Sheba and a team from our partners in North America work together to develop something new. We co-fund it. We have teams on both ends work on this, and if there's an IP developed, we share the IP with our partners in North America. We have 8 of these programs running right now. The most advanced one is with Mayo Clinic, and we're hoping to see a product on the market next year. This is a medical device. With others, it's different. It's a lot about big data, as you could guess. The second thing that we do is share startup companies. So if we have a startup company, obviously an Israeli one, at Sheba that has done a proof of concept, we take that startup company to our partners in North America, and they would run the first in US site with our partners. Our partners really want that. For them, it's very important to hear about the proof of concept and the integration from us, and not directly from the startup, at least at first. And that's something that's definitely a win-win for everyone. And both of these, both the co-innovation and the beta sites for startup company work very well. We're starting now with data sharing. That's where we want to go. We have a first candidates here on the list that are starting now to share data with us in the cloud. And obviously we want to see more of that happen. The fourth principle of Ark is a home for innovation, is actually having a physical space. We started with 1 building. It's now a complex of 5 buildings, all on the Sheba campus. Total space of 25,000 square meters, about 260, 270,000 square feet. So a very large space. You see here an aerial view of the 5 buildings. By the way, this is the digital health building over here. We're going to open this building and this building about a month from now. So if you'll come to Sheba, you'll see these two. There's the first ones that will be built. And this is a GMP facility, only GMP laboratories in this building, which will be ready only in 2025, so some time for that. Basically, when we talk about physical space, we talk about 4 types of activities. Our own ID lab, where we launch our own programs, the startup companies that come in and rent space on the 2nd floor, the strategic partners on the 3rd, and the academia on the 4th. I'll run very quickly through that, and we also have the 5 vertical hubs, which are basically the main topics that we're focusing on. These are strategic decisions: telehealth, big data, personalized medicine, VR, AR, and innovations in surgery. For each one of those, we have a chairman and an advisory board for each one of those vertical hubs. This is the 1st floor, from idea to proof of concept, our own internal lab at Sheba. Some of these faces are here in the conference. You might recognize them. And these are groups at Sheba that get funded, grants of up to $50,000. We provide every year 20 of these grants. So about $1 million we give out every year. And they go into 10 months of rapid development cycles inside the Innovation Center, creating their innovation through the developers of the Innovation Center that are hired by the Innovation Center. The 2nd floor, startup companies rent space, like a WeWork strategy. They come into the 2nd floor, but they also get access to our data, again, access to our clinicians, access to our clinical sites. I call it WeWork on steroids. If there's anybody here from WeWork, I apologize. This is our model from proof of concept to wide rollout. It's about how do we roll this out so that patients get the value, as I've mentioned before. After proof of concept, we want to roll up as quickly as possible. Gidi can share some of his examples of how we try to roll out across the hospital. We have a model for that and a unit that does the integration. And the third floor is our corporate strategic partners. You see some of the names up here. These are companies that have either signed with us or are very close to signing. They come in physically also into this physical space we're building. They're setting up shop and they work with us to innovate. They also get access to our data, which of course is something they like. The fourth floor is the academic floor. We work with a few universities. There's actually more than the screen lists. They send their students, doctoral students, postdoctoral students, and others to come in. If it's a postdoctoral research, they come in 3-4 years. They might need access to our data. They might need access to patients, whatever they need. Obviously, that the universities can deliver, because if the universities can deliver, they don't need us. But for everything that the universities need us for, we've created that platform for those students to come in and work with us, and we work very closely with the universities on that. Data, we use an MD clone platform. Data is everything at Ark. Everybody who sits inside this building with the 4 floors I've designated has access to the data through an MD clone platform, which means they can query the data if they want access to the real de-identified data. They only get access to it on site, and they have to go, of course, through an IRB committee to get approval for that. They can also access synthetic data, which I won't go into the explanation of what synthetic data is, but MD clone is running the demonstrations outside, or ran the demonstrations outside. So synthetic data can be exported out. We don't allow to export out at this stage real data, even if it's de-identified, but only synthetic data. And of course, synthetic data has gone through numerous validation processes at Sheba and other locations. And lastly is our fund that we just launched, a $45 million fund to invest in early stage digital health and smart devices. And this fund is now active. We're doing the first closing right now, and we're going to start investing in companies, and we're doing this together with Tri Ventures, so it's called TV Ark. The office of the fund will sit inside our innovation complex. So the fund is a critical element of the ecosystem, and this is just the first step, because we already have plans for the second fund, which will be 125 million for mid-level, mid-stage digital health companies, which will come later this year. And this is the Ark concept and vision. I won't read through this long sentence, but the idea is pretty much what I've described to you so far. And as I'm saying, we're looking for collaborators, because collaboration is critical. And when you create an ecosystem for innovation, you want to bring in the right partners that would make the ecosystem provide more value to, at the end of the day, for patients. That's what we want to see. So thank you very much.